What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Get Technical. Today we're going to be talking about how you can get a job as a software developer or engineer without a computer science degree. I don't have a computer science degree. I've been a software engineer for about 6 years. So today I'm going to walk you through my experience on how I got into software engineering and continued to get jobs. And then I'm going to talk to you about what I could have done better. So I hate intros. We're just going to get to it. Let's get started. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what I actually went to school for. I studied business. I kind of think it's irrelevant what you study at school, but I'll share my story a little bit with you. So I went to school for business. I was about my senior year. I was working at a paid search advertising firm, and I had gotten introduced to Coder Wars and HackerRank and some of these other online algorithm platforms. It was my senior year, so it was a little bit too late to transfer into computer science. So I started learning software engineering on the side, and then I decided, okay, well, this is something I actually want to do. What's my next step? The next step for most people are going to boot camps. I did go to a boot camp. The boot camp I went to no longer exists. It's in San Francisco. It's called Dev Boot Camp. I'm not going to talk about whether or not boot camps are worth the money and time. So I was between 9 to 18 weeks into the boot camp. I graduated. Great. Then I got my first paid gig, and it was a friend's brother who hired us to write Rails APIs, super basic, but it was my first paid gig that really started the momentum going. And I think it's super important is just to get that first gig. Doesn't matter if it's an internship, a contract role, whatever, just to get experience and to have something on your resume that you can show that you solved problems doing something in software. So that gig lasted about a month. Then after that, I applied to a lot of different places, got rejected a lot. That was super difficult. But it's something I really wanted to do, and it's decided this is what I wanted to pursue for my career. So I finally got an internship doing front-end development at a startup in San Francisco. I was assigned a mentor, and we were there to build out their front-end application in React. The internship was really good because it allowed me to have ownership over the project. I had someone I could work with and bounce ideas off of. So I think that was a really good situation for me. I could learn really fast in a small environment. While I had a lot of responsibility and autonomy, then I could also learn and screw up, because that's super important, is being able to fail and have someone teach you and learn and keep iterating on that. So that internship lasted, I'd say 3 or 4 months. Then I got my first big offer in San Francisco at a large tech company, which really started generating the momentum for my career. So as you can see, all you need to do is get that first job. Get in the door, start proving yourself, keep pushing, interviewing, screwing up your interviews, getting better and better jobs. And then this next job really set the momentum for my career that I could start really moving forward on. But I just wanted to really hit home to you that you need to get that first job, and then you keep generating momentum through each subsequent job. Just as long as you feel like you're making progress in your learning and your career, I think it's a great move. We're going to talk about what I would do different, and I'm going to give you my top 3 things that I would do different if I were to give myself advice for starting out to become a software engineer. Advice tip number 1. Focus on a specific part of the stack, either the front end, back end, and in some cases, it's okay to focus just on full stack. So we're going to break this down into 2 parts. First part, focusing on a specific part of the stack, you start seeing the same interview questions and you become more familiar with the interview process and kind of the things they'll be asking you. The second part is that getting your first job, you really need to be a domain expert and show that you know what you're talking about, because you're competing against people that have been in the industry for a while. That doesn't mean I'm talking about being an expert in React or Vue. I'm talking about being a front-end domain expert, understanding the different aspects of the front-end interview questions, algorithms you might be asked on the front end, etc. Same thing goes for the back end. What are some common problems that you see on the back end? And depending on which part of the stack you're on, you want to be building projects and focusing on that area so that you have real life scenarios to pull from when interviews are asking you these questions. Tip number 2, contribute to open source earlier on in your career. Contributing to open source not only lets you give back to the community that helps you build and succeed in software development, but it's also the closest thing to replicating what working at a real job is. You need to communicate with people, problem solve, dive into code bases you're not familiar with. And I'm going to give you a bonus tip. The bonus tip is contribute to open source projects within the domain that you are focusing on. What does that mean? Well, if you're focusing on front end, maybe you want to contribute to a popular front end tooling library like ESLint. If you're focusing on the back end, you want to contribute to maybe the Ruby on Rails project. These are big projects. They have infrastructure and people that are willing to mentor you through from knowing nothing to making your first contribution. All right, this is the last tip. Tip number 3, identify the tools and workflows you need outside of software development, meaning programming in JavaScript, React, etc., that'll make you successful at your job. What does that mean? That means being really familiar with Git workflows, and working in a team, which is why in the previous advice, contributing to open source earlier on, it gets you really familiar with working with people on merge requests, pull requests, and branches, different parts of the code, and resolving conflicts, going through these different workflows and what can happen in a work environment when it gets merged in, deploy processes, etc. So identifying the tools outside of actually developing software, the things that make you productive to develop software are super important and getting really good at before your first job so that you don't need to learn that when you get your first job. Being familiar with these different workflows is kind of like asking someone if they're familiar with Microsoft Word in 2021. Don't put that on your resume. Get really good at it and be confident that you can work in an engineering team. I hope this was super valuable, sharing my story and you learning how I went from essentially not knowing anything in tech to becoming a software engineer and the things I would do differently. Look out for my next video, part 2, how open source can really boost your career when becoming a software developer. If you liked the video, like, subscribe, add a comment, question. I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.